'Twas a dark and stormy night, and all through the house not a creature was stirring. So we kind of had grand hopes, but without any sunlight, this is a bit of a bust. When I'm writing the Phoenix series, or when other ideas for other books are coming to my mind, they're coming as scenes like as if I'm watching a movie. So I'm actually in the scene or a character in the scene watching it all play out. And my process with writing is to just try and get that scene down as fast as possible as while I'm seeing it all play out and listening to the conversations. And then I go back later and thicken up that first draft. What I'm finding is that as I'm writing more and more and kind of also getting more experience with the editing process, that the initial draft is coming out like pre-thickened. I'm not really needing to do much. I'm just needing to sometimes add a little context or to make sure that continuity is there, or just really to do basic editing. But I guess that's kind of life with anything. The way we do things is always in flux and changing as we upskill. Ultimately for me, it's a very visceral process. It's something that I am in and experiencing, and I know with the Phoenix series, I've been working on this, which sounds insane, for 9 years now, nearly 10, and I've thought about it just about every day. I've watched that movie just about every day of the last decade. So there is part of me that gets ideas. Like yesterday, I had a really great idea for another book I want to work on, but I don't want to get distracted and get off task and then have the Phoenix series drag out forever. That's not satisfying for readers. It's not satisfying for me. You need to kind of control that sort of decision to procrastinate, because I procrastinate doing everything, and just kind of get on with it and get in the story. And just because I've been living it every day for 10 years doesn't mean the reader has. And once you start a series, you really need to just kind of get on with it and get it out. But it's really kind of fun to get flashes of new stories or to see new scenes come out. And lately a lot of scenes for book 6 in the Phoenix series, which will be the final book, have been coming, and so I've been doing a little bit of writing, but I've predominantly been editing lately. As an indie author, you don't have the big machine of a publishing house behind you, which means that everything is basically on you. And while that is potentially a lot more expensive and does involve some more work, I'm not sure that the benefits you would get from being a traditionally published author would actually outweigh the cons for me, which is about losing control and losing the rights to your story, which is kind of what you give up if you become a traditionally published author. And generally, unless they think your book is the next big thing, they're not going to be actually supporting you in an enormous way like most people anticipate that publishing companies will. They'll do a bit because obviously it's within their best interest that you sell the book, but you're still going to be doing some marketing behind the scenes. You're still going to be producing work. You're still going to be driving that process. So for me, I would much rather retain my rights and have complete control and be able to do whatever I like with the story and whenever I like with the story. The thing I find most challenging about being an indie author is you want all the things. You want a great cover, you want a great editor, you want a solid marketing plan, you want to produce character art, and the trouble is it all costs quite a lot, particularly if you're aiming for the highest quality, which is kind of what I'm going for, because anything less just feels like why bother with the whole thing. If you've ever been on my Instagram page, which is @PipCoombs, you will see that I quite enjoy the photography side of things. The only trouble with doing all the things is that they take away from what you need to be doing, which is writing. And the writing itself takes up quite a large amount of time, but so does all these other things like producing content, producing videos, getting Instagram posts, and even thinking about what you're going to write on your Instagram posts. A lot of the time, like, I really struggle because you don't want to be one of those accounts where it sounds like you're trying to be super profound all the time. But sometimes, you have these realizations as you go along and you want to share them. And it just all consumes a lot of time, when ultimately what you kind of want to be focusing on is producing the product, because marketing's all well and good if you haven't got a product. One of the things I'm conflicted about, and I would love your opinion in the comments about this, is whether you categorize a book that's a bit borderline as young adult or new adult. Because young adult as a classification and a genre and a series and has a lot of meaning to a reader. They know what they're going to be expecting. It works from a marketing perspective because there's a huge market for young adult books. New adult doesn't really have that. It doesn't really have a category that at this point has as much steam and weight behind it as young adult. Whether that will change over time, I don't know. But the first couple of books of the Phoenix series, definitely young adult. But it's going to be done over a couple of years, and there's going to be 6 books. So they are going to grow up and they are going to experience more adult things, and the books definitely get darker. So it is going to kind of slide a bit more into a new adult, but I don't really know how I feel about starting a series off as YA and then changing it to new adult, as might be appropriate to classify the individual book, but if the overall series is YA, I don't know what to do about that one. My writing process has had to change over time. When I initially got the first ideas, I was just scrambling, writing down all these character details and researching various different natural ingredients, like, say for example, emeralds, so that the items that each witch or wizard put in their wands could actually have some significance and some meaning. And then I sat down and this whole flood of text came out. And obviously my first draft was completely rubbish. But what ended up happening was I divided that book into 2. So that kind of became the first book and the second book of Night Rises. And then I kind of flushed out a lot more of the details and really thickened that up. And in the middle of doing that, I had about 2 years off. I walked away from the manuscript for about 2 years because I was thinking about plot holes and how do you fix that, and how do you get that character where you need them to be when you need them to be there. How do you create that kind of situation and that kind of emotional response and have it be authentic. You're referencing street names in the Hive, and I wanted to be able to be consistent with that, like to not jumble up the names, because I mean obviously you hope that a lot of people really love the series and really dig into it and like look for those fine details, and if you're going to do it, then do it properly, lay the Easter eggs, leave things and hints for people to find, but you also need to be really consistent. So I took time to like draw street maps so that I could be consistent across the series, and that has been so helpful. And to me that's a little bit different from a series Bible where you like reference back to who has blue eyes or who has whatever and what happened in this scene that you need to link back to. That's just more about world creation and world building and being consistent. But that has changed over time. It's had to change because the more time I've spent in this world and thinking about it every day, the more I don't need to reference back to those things, the more the story flows naturally. You don't need to sit there and think, how would this happen? Because you know the characters way more intimately and you just know how you're going to get where you're going to go. But initially you kind of have to think about that a little bit, and I just don't know how authors write books, especially like YA books that have a complex plot and when they're more dystopian and they have a world that's got to be built and a magic system that's got to be created and all of those sorts of things. I don't know how they do that in 3 months and have it be solid and consistent and good. I just don't know how that happens, but maybe I just don't have any discipline to sit down and do it, which seems factual. At the moment I'm in editing mode. I am going through the 3rd book of the Phoenix series, the manuscript, and giving it as savage an edit as I can. The really nice thing is that because I had such a massive break from it, it was about 12 months since I actually finished the draft and the first initial edits until now, and I've left it alone for that 12 months. And the nice thing is that I'm finding that when I go back, I'm thinking I need to add this, I need to make sure this happens and this detail and this little, and I'm finding that I've actually already put that in, but because of what happened last year and the level of the burnout that I experienced working in healthcare and just doing a job I hated for so long, I have found that I forgot that I had put those little details in. So it's kind of nice and reassuring to know that my brain was working back then and that I'm being consistent with what I want through the story. And the story is being consistent over time. So that's been a really nice experience with coming back to edit again 12 months later. It's just taken me 12 months to feel ready to actually look at anything in that level of detail again. My editor was also homeschooling, like so many of you, and I just didn't want to start with a new editor, but I'm back firmly in the editing, although firmly in the editing is very loose because I am being distracted by the character art all the time at the moment, because it just blows my mind and it's so unreal to see it all come to life that you kind of get distracted by that and you get lost in this fantasy world, which is the whole point of creating these stories. Like, you create them to get lost in them, to allow other people to get lost in them, to escape reality. So having that actually happen because of the character art is kind of lovely. Finding new and interesting locations to film at, like today we are in Port Kembla and we are in the 60 tunnels. I don't actually know if there are 60 tunnels, there are about 4 entrances, but most of them are locked off, and because it is raining outside today, there's not a lot of light, so there's not really many options for places to film. But finding lots of different locations to film does take a lot of time. This is an hour and a half from where I live. I know I don't need to do this, but I actually enjoy this way more than filming like in my lounge room or with a blank wall behind me or something like that. It just doesn't really feel as fun or as creative, and I really love doing the artwork. But all of this stuff kind of takes away from what you really need to be doing, which is editing, writing. But it's fine because I'm actually happy again for the first time in a long time, and I'm feeling that creative flow. I'm feeling like I'm enjoying this again. It doesn't feel like a labor anymore. It doesn't feel like something I have to do. Whereas if I film at home, it does feel like something I have to do. So I do hope you've enjoyed coming on a little tour of the tunnels that we can access that actually have some light. But yeah, I'm excited. I hope that this whole process helps me find readers. I hope that this enables me to make a career as a writer. I really don't want to go back to healthcare. I wasn't happy in healthcare. I'm allergic to masks, and we've been walking around Port Kembla today in masks again because one of the super infectious variants has come to our little bay. So, you know, we've got to be careful again, and it just reminds me how much I don't want to go back to healthcare. But I mean, for now, the plan is a year off to both relax and get over the burnout that I was struggling with, and to try and see if this is a conceivable life's vocation. And for the time being, I'm enjoying it again, and that's really all that matters to me. Last year I was really in survival mode like a lot of people, and it was interesting to see how my motivation and creativity was completely strangled and stifled by that. And really that's kind of been going on a lower level for me, obviously pandemic free, for a couple of years beforehand because I wasn't enjoying my job. So it has been interesting to see now that kind of that noose has been released, how much more has kind of started to flow again. There's so much I love about writing YA books. It's a total escape from reality, and my whole life I've been told to be realistic and get your head out of the clouds, which is why I named my publishing company In the Clouds, because I've never successfully removed my head from the clouds. I am always daydreaming. I recently took that 16 personalities test that everyone's taking, and I tested as a mediator, and it was like reading a summary someone had written about me after stalking me for years and years and years. It basically was like, you're always daydreaming, and I was like, yeah, facts. But for me, I can't imagine existing in a world this beautiful and also this challenging and not sometimes disappearing into other worlds or being inspired into another fantasy realm. I can't imagine just walking around every day and that's it, that's all there is. I'd love to think of what it would be like if you had access to magic. As a kid, I desperately wanted to have magic. So to be able to actually create that world and kind of experience it as an adult is really, really satisfying. I know I was trying to get a Riley walk and talk thing going, and we haven't really been able to walk today because of the rain, but I hope that you've enjoyed this trip to Port Kembla with me into the tunnels and seeing all the cool graffiti and the colours and just a different background and having a chat about author life and everything that's happening and how the writing process is going for me and has gone for me. If you've enjoyed this video or any of my other videos, do please like and subscribe to my channel. Check me out on Instagram if you want to see some of the character art as I release it. My Instagram handle is @PipCoombs. And you can also find my books in the Phoenix series, and currently there are 2 released, and it's The Hunted is the first book and A Night Rises is the second book, and you can find those books in paperback and ebook anywhere where books are available. Dun-dun, dun-dun. Oh, this one's open, Ray. It's hella dark. So, is this the way to the tunnels? I feel like perhaps it would have been easier if we came down the other way.